Hi everyone, welcome. My name is Meredith, one of the HUSQVARNA Viking educators, and it is February. It is a new month of the block of the month where we go through a couple of the blocks from the Sweet Dreams Quilt. If you have not started this with us yet, you can find the link in the description for this specific quilt. It is free. It can be found on the Creative8 website. But in January, I did the rail fence blocks. So I have those to show you just as a recap. So if you're watching this video and you have not done these yet, you can find that on our YouTube page, the instructions for these blocks that we did here. So they're very simple and easy to do, and it would be very quick for you to catch up as well to do those with us. But for this month, we are going to be doing the Flying Geese blocks. So there's this one right here. And then there are two of these. So there's this one with 6 flying geese. And then there's another one with 8 flying geese. So I already have these completed. I'm doing it a little bit different this month than I did it last month because I wanted you to be able to see these. So I have fabric to recreate some of these, but just in a smaller way. So we're going to start with this one first. This one just has a bunch of little flying geese. And I wanted to touch on something because you'll notice there's more white in these blocks than you saw in the other ones. Somebody had asked in the comments of the first video, in the instructions, it tells you to have 3 yards of background fabric. And they were like, well, where am I using this background fabric if I've got my 18 to 25 back quarters? So it's completely up to you. For the rail fence blocks, I actually used white fabric for my embroidered pieces. I just had a big piece and I cut these down. You could definitely do all color, or you could interchange it too with white. If you look at the original one, you'll see where they used white a little bit more. It's completely up to you. This is a very scrappy quilt, so it's on you when you want to use it. They just want to make sure you have enough that you're buying it ahead of time and you've got enough that you need. So for this one, I used a little bit more white on these, and I used a little bit more white on the larger ones as well. So I will tell you which ones those are as we go through it. So let's get started. We're going to do these. You can find these instructions for this one. It's going to look like this page right here. And I have a couple little notes on there. So it doesn't have the fabric to cut for these because you actually use leftover fabric from the previous block, but we haven't done that block yet. So I'm going to walk you through how to make these blocks with specific cuts as we go. So you're going to need 16. So have your little pen and paper ready to go, or if you've got your printed out instructions, you can write them beside it as well. You're going to need 16 white 4.5 by 4.5 inch blocks. So mine are not white, but you're going to need 16 white ones as I drop it. Hold on. 16 white ones, and then you're going to need 4. So we have 4 colors here. 1, 2, 3, 4. We are going to need 4 of each of these. So again, 16 total blocks, 4.5 by 4.5 of 4 different fabrics. So does that make sense? 16 total white, 4.5 by 4.5, and then 4.5 by 4.5 light blue. I'm just describing what's on here. Light blue, dark blue, yellow, and green. 4 of 4 different colors so that you have that option and you have the different colorways I have here. So I'm going to show you how to just make a simple half square triangle. I'm going to show you how to do it if you have the laser guidance on your machine and if you don't have it. There's 2 different ways you can do that. So this first way is if you don't have a machine with the laser guidance. That's okay. It's not a big deal. It can easily be done. What you want to do is you want to measure 1/4 of an inch from the center point and draw lines on either side. And we're going to sew down these lines. They actually make a little ruler that you line up on those point to point and you draw the lines on either side. I did not bring it in here with me, but there are some thin, long rulers that they make to make this a little bit easier. So again, if you don't have the laser guidance, this is what you can do. But if you do have the laser guidance, because these blocks are a little bit larger, I actually went ahead and just drew a line straight down the middle of another one. So I wanted to show you your different options, and then we would use our laser for the other side. So I'm going to sew down one side on one and down the other side on the other and show you how to use that laser guide. So let's get to it. we're going to start with this side first. If you don't have the laser guide, you would sew down both sides over both of these lines right here. So I'm going to come right over here. And I've just got my 2 pieces right sides together. So I have one of my blue and one of my colored ones, or in your case, it would be one of the white along with one of the colors. So each white piece will match up with one of the other 16 colored pieces that you have, if you want to go that route where you have white with them. So we're going to sew just straight down this, just using a normal straight stitch. And I have my IDF engaged to keep my fabric moving smoothly and evenly. So all the way down just like that. You would just mark all of your blocks a 1/4 inch away from that center point and sew on either side of the line. But if you don't, and you do have the laser guidance, I just drew a line down the center right here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on my projection right here. Nope, I clicked too many times. Just like that. Let's move this out of the way. Oh, did I turn on? Hold on. Oh, there we go. Now it's turned on. And you're going to see it got a little bit dimmer over here now too. So I have a line. Let's see if we can zoom in just a little bit there so you can see. The white line is going to be my stitch guide line. So that's actually my sewing line. And this red line is going to be my guide line. So when you are moving, so that red line is going to be stitch guide 1. I have actually already moved it to vertically 6.35. That is a 1/4 inch over from the needle. And that's the perfect distance that I need. So what we're going to do, because when you start sewing, that white line is going to disappear. So I'm going to come on this side over here. I'm going to put that red line along my center line that I drew the line of right here. And we're just going to sew all the way down. If your squares were a little bit shorter, you wouldn't need to have the line. I just like to have it because these squares are a little bit bigger and they are longer than the sewing guide that I have there. So we're just going to sew all the way down. So does that make sense? If not, please feel free to add comments below. I'm happy. I will come back and check them. So you can see that I have my center line and my 2 lines on the other side. But if you look on this side, you can see that my sewing lines go over those 2 lines that I drew if you don't have a laser guidance. So then what we're going to do, bear with me because I'm going to back this up here. And what we're going to do is we're going to cut these now. So right here, these are for my next block. So I've got my little mat here. What we're going to do is we're going to cut from point to point right here. So line this up and just cut straight down. So that's going to give me 2 half square triangles right there. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually square these blocks up. So these are larger than what I need. I would go over to my iron and press these first so that they're good and clean. Again, you can press them open, you can press to the dark side. We're not going to debate that today on this one, but either way you would like to do that. Then we're going to square this up to 3.5 by 3.5 and we will sew them together. So I'm going to go press these, square these up, and then come back and we will sew some of them together. Okay, I have my 2 half square triangles pressed, and I actually wanted to show you how you square them up because I've got a couple different rulers, just giving you some tips and tricks for what's been easy for me and made things more successful. So I have a normal 3.5 by 3.5 inch ruler, but I also have these. Again, I use these often. It's not something we sell, but they are rulers that you can buy that help with this. So they have a little ledge underneath them right in here, and that's what that little seam is going to ride on, and it's going to give you a good squared edge. So it, like you can see, it locks into place, and I can't slide that. It slides left to right along that seam, but it doesn't slide off of it. So if you've got this type of ruler, this is the way to go. This is what I use. Oh, and I'm at a weird angle here. Just like that. Just like that, and that got me my 2 sides. My mat does turn, but I've got all this stuff around it, so. And then we're gonna line this back up over here, and we're gonna cut one there and one right there. So that's gonna give us our 3.5 inch block right there. If you don't have these rulers, that's completely okay. There are other rulers that you can use. You can use your normal long ruler, or if you have a 3.5 inch ruler, it usually has this diagonal line on it. So what we're gonna do is we're going to line that line up like it would be if we had that little ledge. And then we're just gonna cut. Just like that, get our 2 sides. And then we're gonna turn over here, get all those out of the way. Line this up again, trying to stay out of the way. And just cut slowly from one corner to the next. And so now I have 2 half square triangles. So we're gonna sew these together. For this particular block, let me come back over here and I'll show you. All of these, we want them to look like flying geese. We want them to, you know, all line up. So depending on which way your color is, or if you want your white in the middle and your color on the side, it's completely up to you. You want 2 of the same to be pointed up together so that it gives you that good V. So let's line those up over here. And we're gonna come back over here. Hold on, y'all. Let's get right here. Zoom in just a little bit. I'm gonna turn my projection off. We don't need that on right now. And I always like to lay these out to make sure I'm doing them the right way before I sew them together. So this is not how we want them. We want them like this, to where we have that V. And then you can just fold it over like that. And I like to start with that thicker area first, that seam down here, and then work my way down. So line those up with a 1/4 inch, and I have my 1/4 inch presser foot on right now. And then we're just gonna sew slowly, get that going there. Let's stop with our needle down. And make sure everything's lined up. Once I get my needle in the fabric, I like to just double check that everything's lined up right here. And again, we're just getting over that little hump right there. Lining everything up, and then we're gonna, oh, my thread's got under there. So my needle's down, so I'm not gonna lose my spot, but my tail of my thread is caught up under here. Let me just snip that because it's gonna bunch it up. There we go. So line these up, and then just continue to sew all the way down like that. And then we're gonna cut our tail. And you have one of your flying geese right there. So let's come back over here. So you're gonna need, let me show you this. Again, 16 white squares and 16 colored squares, but 4 of each of those colors. And that's gonna give you all of these. And then we're just going to sew them all together until you get your one big piece right here. So again, I wanted to have this ready for you. I didn't think it was necessary to show you how to sew all of these together. I feel like that's pretty self-explanatory, but here's what it's gonna look like when it's finished. So let's go on to the next one, because the next one is a different way of doing flying geese. So these flying geese all have that seam in the middle of them. You can sort of see where that's different. But this next one is one big block. So these guys right here. And you will have 2 of these left over. So the instructions for these and the cut are all in here. These are towards more of the beginning of the instructions. These are the ones we're doing next. And it has what size you need all of them to be. So you're gonna need 4 9.5 by 9.5 inch blocks. So I did 4 white ones. And then you're gonna need 16 5.5 or 5.25 by 5.25. So that's gonna be your color. If I'm right, am I doing that math right? No, I'm doing it wrong. Sorry, your color. I'm getting them switched up. So backtrack. This A cut right here in the instructions, this is going to be your color. So for me, it was my pink and my red. I need 2 of my red squares that are 9.5 by 9.5 and 2 pink squares that are 9.5 by 9.5. Then we're going to need 16 5.25 by 5.25 white squares. That's going to give us the white on either side. If you don't want to do white, that's completely fine. I feel like in their instructions, If you look at the original quilt on the front, one of them, they did color and color. Do you see this one at the bottom right here? So they didn't do white, but this one over here, they did white on. So completely up to you, whatever you have scrap wise, that's what we're going with. But I wanted to do white because I wanted my colors to stand out more. You will have 2 extra of these when you do them because only 6 on one and 8 on the other. So what I have for this one, again, I have your different ways of doing it. If you have the laser guidance, or if you don't, that's okay. If you don't, on your blocks, you're going to draw a 1/4 inch from the center from point to point, just the way we did on the other ones, on all 4 of your blocks. If you do have the laser guidance, I just drew a line straight down the middle from point to point. So what we're going to do here, you back up just a little bit so you can see. So this is my 9.5 by 9.5 inch block. I'm going to take this guy and lay it from point to point right there. Then I'm going to take my next one and lay it just over top. Does not matter that they overlap, just like that. And we're going to just pin these in place so that it holds them. If you're comfortable with your sewing, you definitely don't have to do that. If you're new to sewing, I strongly suggest pinning these. It just makes life just a little bit easier. And you want them to be parallel to the lines or to the points, just like that, so that you're not going to hit them when you start sewing. So what we're going to do is we're going to sew from point to point and point to point back. So let's get to it. Again, if you have questions or you need clarification on things, feel free to add that in the chat and I will be back to answer those. All right, and that's what we have. And you can, once you've sewn those, you can take those pins out. So what we're going to do now is we are going to cut down the middle of these. This again is the way, if you do not have the laser guidance, you just draw a 1/4 inch on either side of your point and sew down both of those lines. Now what we're going to do is we're just going to cut straight down the middle of that right there. So I'm going to do that really quick. I'm not going to move my camera for this one. Don't want to make y'all sick. This will just be a quick little cut and I will show you. So right, here's what we have. You end up with 2 of these little guys like this. And what you're going to do now is you're going to take this over to your iron and press these again. You can press them open, press them to the seam, and then we'll come back and I will show you the next step. All right, so I have pressed my 2 pieces. So you're gonna have 2 pieces just like this, but we need to do it one more time. So for this way, I'm gonna show you if you had the laser guidance. So again, I just drew a line with my Frixion pen from point to point, and then we're gonna use our laser guide off to the side to do that. So to do this next one, we're going to take one of our blocks right here and put it in this other corner. And we're going to sew on either side of this. So let's come back over here and we're going to turn our projection on. And I have my horizontal line at 6.35, which is 1/4 of an inch from the needle. And let's zoom in a little bit so you can see it. So I've got my sewing line right there and my red line, my laser guide line. So we're going to have our red line lined up with the line that we drew. And we're just going to sew down, making sure that that red line is lined up all the way down as you go. And you'll notice that I did not cut my thread as I went. I chain pieced it. It's just a lot easier for me just to do it that way. So I'm going to cut where I chain pieced it. And what we're going to do is we're going to cut on that line straight down the middle, not on our sewn lines, but on the ones on either side of it in the middle. So let me cut those really quick here. And then I will show you, and we're pretty well done. So it is a lot of repetitiveness with these flying geese, but it's good practice if you haven't done a lot of flying geese or, you know, things like that. But so you're going to end up with 4 of these blocks like this, and you are going to square these up. So again, you're going to go over and you're going to press it, and then let me get the instructions. I want to make sure I give you the right measurement, but again, all of this can be found in your instructions. So you're going to square this up to 4.5 by 8.5. There is a little bit of wiggle room you have in there, but you want to make sure. Let me zoom back so you can see this, because I want you to know. Let's come back right here. When you're doing this. So when you do this, imagine that I had pressed this, all right, and we got a good flat here. You need to have 1/4 of an inch above this point. So start there. Don't start with the bottom first. Find that 1/4 of an inch, line that up right there, and you will have these diagonal lines as well. So I've got this 45-degree angle right here. So what I'm going to do is I've got 1/4 of an inch from the top, and then I have this 45-degree line, and I have that lined up with the angle of my triangle. And if you're new to cutting this, again, don't try to do 2 sides at the same time. Just do one side first like that. So then we're going to turn this over like this, and it said 4.5. So now I'm going to line this up, my bottom, again, making sure that this angle is lined up with my angle of my triangle. Lined up right there, and then we're going to cut off this excess down here, just like that. So now I'm 4.5 this way. Now I need 8.5 this way. So half of 8.5 is 4.25. So let's come over here, line. I've got 4.25 right here. I'm going to put that on my point, and then also make sure that my line is straight, because this is a straight line here at the bottom. 4.25 right here on my point, straight line here, and we're going to cut off that excess right there, and then we're going to do the same thing over here. So 8.5, and you're not going to have a ton to cut off, but you should have enough. So I'm at 8.5 over here. I'm lined up straight on my 4.5 down at the bottom with my straight line, and then we're going to cut off that excess right there. So you're going to have 8 of these in one way and 8 of them in another way. So that's going to be these guys right here. So you're going to have one where you sew all 8 of them together. If you can see, I've got all 8 sewn together. And then you will have another one where, there it is, with 6 of them. So you'll have 2 of these squares left over when you're done. But that's going to be your flying geese blocks. Thank you.